Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Brianne Roth. I'm the Public Programs Coordinator here at the Nantucket Historical Association. I want to welcome you all here for our third Food for Thought for our fall series. Before we get things started, if everyone could please check your cell phones to ensure they're on silent so we don't disrupt today's presentation. As always, we want to thank you for joining us, and we would like to recognize that the Food for Thought program series is made possible in part by the MS Worthington Foundation, and that media sponsorship is generously provided by Novation Media. This afternoon's lecture will be followed by a short Q&A, so if you have any questions, we will open the floor up for Q&A after the talk ends. And on to today's speaker. Tessandra Alberdi is the Executive Director of Family and Children's Services of Nantucket Incorporated, the island's only private non-for-profit community mental health and substance abuse agency. Tessandra received her BS in biology with minors in chemistry and Spanish from the University of North Carolina at Wilmington. She pursued a graduate degree in rehabilitation counseling and psychology and was awarded the Merit Scholarship from the University of North Carolina Chapel Hill School of Medicine. After extensive research in direct therapy practice for individuals with addiction and trauma, she moved to Nantucket from Chapel Hill after spending summers with her family on Cape Cod. Washing ashore over 5 years ago, she continues to be passionate and committed to improving mental health services for all island residents. As executive director and practitioner in the community, her goals are to increase community collaboration and awareness of mental health, improve interdisciplinary wraparound services, care to youth at risk for addiction and suicide, and create ongoing financial sustainability at the agency. She hopes to build island ties to promote prevention, redefine wellness as a whole, and lower the stigma of seeking mental health and substance abuse services. Outside of work, Tessandra loves spending time exploring the outdoors, traveling to see her family in Spain and England, cooking with friends, and reading on the beach. Please join me in giving a warm round of applause to Tessandra Alberdi.
Good afternoon. Since it's a small, intimate group, I might be walking around without a microphone, but please let me know if you need one. Thank you all for coming. That was a beautiful introduction, made me sound much better than I actually am. So it's a wonderful opportunity for all of us to get together, and I'm going to try to use the PowerPoint and the pointer at the same time. What I'm going to do is give you an overview of the counseling agency, who we are, what we do in the community, a couple of case examples of what people seeking treatment look like these days. I'm then going to hone in on nationally what's going on with substance abuse and mental health, as well in this area in particular, what we're doing to address it. Please slow down. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we will have some Q&A at the end. So as the presenter said, Family and Children's Services was started 65 years ago when our community pulled together and said, we really think this community can do better. We can wrap our arms around one another and help our neighbors to the left and right of us. We are very proud today to say we're just under 30 in staff.
I thought I talked loud. Okay. Just under 30 in staff, and our staff consists of psychiatrists, master's level clinicians, clinical psychologists, bachelor level providers, a retail department, as well as some administrative staff. It is lovely to see these men and women every single day love what they do because they see people get better. If you notice on the top of the slide, we do have some asterisks. I'm proud that our staff represent the community that we serve. We have staff from South Africa, Costa Rica, Eastern Europe, and we have 5 different languages we provide services in. That ends up meeting the need of the community that we have that is underrepresented currently. Looking a little bit further into the services we provide, I also have a schematic over here. Starting on the far left, we received a 5-year grant for a family resource center. The idea of this is that we were really shifting to prevention, free services, getting people in the doors without any barriers. As many of you know, Family and Children's Service was the direct crisis responder for 28 years. Every single loss of life from suicide, drowning, overdose, psychotic break, substance abuse episode, we interviewed at the police department, at people's homes, in the public school, in the ER. When Governor Baker decided to privatize emergency services, the agency no longer was funded to do so. We did a very strategic planning to move to free services so that we could not keep chasing our tail with crisis and responding to it, but shifting to prevention and education. The Family Resource Center currently provides 29 free groups a month. This looks like parenting journey, teaching parents with their children, food provided, child care provided, how to be better parents, how to really think about where they came from and what they're bringing to the table. Teen groups, there's a girls group of 17 who have thought of suicide or have attempted that are supporting one another in the high school. We have drop-in substance abuse groups, and we have yoga for mindfulness and relieving stress. We also have a court and school liaison that back and forth between the private schools and the public schools to help triage our most at-risk youth. These are early breaking and entering, early substance use charges, runaway risks, and those that are truant in school, not attending, not showing up. Free services, 40 hours a week to help intervene on that. Starting to the next over is the Children's Behavioral Health Initiative. It is 47% of what we do is youth services. We are at the Boys and Girls Club, we are at Strong Wings, we are at the public schools every single day. You will see therapists in there helping children succeed, identifying what their challenges are, working with the school system, working with families, working in their homes to help them become an integrated, healthy unit. We are very fortunate to offer that to Spanish, French, Russian, Patois, and English families of language so that we can again meet our minority population. Family and Children Services, while it accepts all insurances, slides all the way down to zero. We do recognize that there is a minority population that is growing, and we fundraise to provide those services for everyone. We don't think that it should be a financial basis. It's a human right issue. Everyone's deserving of mental health and addiction treatment. Thank you. Next one, we have a community support provider. I'm gonna do a little ticker here. This is very similar to what a youth service looks like, but it's for adults. So let's say a 21-year-old male, he didn't finish college, he's back on island, he is really in the throes of addiction, heroin addiction. He's had a relapse, he's gone to the hospital. We intervene and bring this person to Lepri's Suboxone clinic. We intervene and bring this person to an NA meeting. We intervene and go to the person's house and bring them in for treatment. It is non-clinical case management in the community for adults with significant addiction and mental health. It's a new program we're happy to offer, and we have a grant to fund it. Our next one is outpatient talk therapy. We have 17 different therapists from master's level to clinical psychologists that help couples stay together, learn how to communicate, identify children that are coming back from college that are not sure where they're going in life, reestablish that self-esteem. We have young people with significant depression around cyberbullying, how to fit into the schools, get the skills they need to deal with the significant anxiety and mental health symptoms that they have. We are very proud to offer almost this last fiscal year 26,000 visits. And any common day we have 500 people in treatment, and that ranges up to about 660 a year we serve. That does not include all the families that we touch in doing so. So while we have one child who's a client, we're helping the family as a whole. We're helping the parents and their siblings. We anticipate that number growing over this next year to about 30,000 and hoping to get just under 750 people in treatment. When I started as a therapist 6 years ago, I did 24-hour crisis response. There were 10 of us. We had pens and papers. We had no laptops. I'm really proud to say we now are fully integrated into electronic health records. We have staff that are fully trained working with IT mobile in the community. We provide ongoing education to keep our clinicians the most evidence-based practice. We are working to continue to grow at a sustainable pace to meet our community's needs and would anticipate our community, as more prevention work goes, more people in treatment, and that's a good thing. We do also have the only court-ordered provider. Every single first and second offender who goes through the court system, we offer substance abuse treatment for. We also offer psychological testing. This is a really key component in our public school system. We identify the challenges that children may have from developmental disabilities, sensory integration issues, autism, and we help work with the school system hand over hand and with families to help those children succeed. We are really proud that when people come into treatment, it's not who they are when they're leaving treatment. These are the kids that really thrive and end up going on to college, vocational school, a work placement. We also offer psychiatry, as our community is very clear and aware of. During 2006 to 2009, we lost 8 youth to death by suicide. At that time, our agency decided we would not stop giving any services, regardless of what that cost us financially. We opened our doors and said we won't turn any child away. In doing so, we feel like we are addressing prevention, we are ensuring people get treatment, and consistently doing so. We are proud we are the only provider on Nantucket offering child psychiatry. We also have adult psychiatry for our 18 and above. Every other week, we are the only ones currently providing it in this capacity. So medication management is a key concept. It's biochemical in the brain that can turn people's lives around concurrently with mental health and substance abuse treatment. We couldn't do it without the second shop. 14 years ago, we started a small retail thrift store in which the community very generously gave to us, and we turned around and sold things that were very gently used, from household goods to furniture to fund services, in which people didn't have to pay anything to walk in the door. We have moved our location. We are open year-round, 6 days a week, just next to Cumbies, mid-island. I believe it's in the heart of the island where most of our year-round community works, and we're happy to say that we are supportive of that. In doing so, we end up offering more free service. So please donate and shop. So what am I really here to talk about? As everyone sees on the newspapers, mental health and substance use nationally, and in Massachusetts in particular, in our local newspaper, this is a growing conversation of topic. For a little bit of stats, just to kind of get an idea of what we're talking about, we're going to start large and scale into Nantucket. Within the U.S., about 18%, I got to remember to turn the mic, over 18 have some type of mental health. I'd like to think about mental health on a continuum. I believe this as a therapist. I also believe it as an administrator of our agency. There's not one person in this room that doesn't have mental health. We all have it. It's how we take care of it. It's anxiety, it's depression, it's grief after losing a loved one. It's a transition in which we feel maybe a little uncomfortable about it. Sometimes there are more significant ends of mental health, but all of us have it, and I think that's a really good way to normalize what we're feeling. That's the same way around substance use. How many people have a cup of coffee and in a couple of weeks need 2 cups of coffee? It happens without people recognizing, and everywhere on a continuum, someone falls. So in the past year, about 20 million adults had some substance use disorder. We see nationally, as cannabis continues to be decriminalized and more readily available, that other forms of drugs are bumping up in prevalence and intensity. I'm going to talk a little bit more about heroin in a moment, but just to get a context, what we often see is that people co-occur with 2 different situations, with mental health and addiction. This is a subset of who we're treating, and it's more common than you realize. So, scaling down to Massachusetts, New England has a lot of things that make it beautiful and special, and in particular, vulnerable to mental health and addiction. In Massachusetts, about 12% of adolescents, we consider that under 18 years of old, have tried illicit drugs within a month. I'm just going to let that sit for a moment. Of those, about 4% had a significant thought of killing themselves. Adolescence is hard. It is not the time when you grew up. There's social media, there's texting, there's a lot of input on image and performance and pressures to succeed and how to get into college and how to keep up with one's peers. It's tough, and it's even tougher now when substances are more readily available and more potent and legal than they were probably when all of us were that age. So as a therapist, people ask me, so is it mental health, is it substance use, which is it? My personal preference, you treat them both at the same time, and it does matter, but not when you think about treatment. It's all the same thing of coping skills. What are the cravings? What's the context for your social support? How are you going to seek help? Chicken or the egg, they're both there. In Nantucket, we have had a long history of cyclical clusters of suicide. This is something that you'll see through historians that have been having for several hundreds of years while we've populated this small island. For young people, 15 to 24, it's twice the state rate here on this island. Nantucket has the highest rate in the Commonwealth for young people to think about killing themselves. When you look statewide at prevalence in Massachusetts, it's 2.4 for every 100,000. Obviously, we don't have that population even in the height of the summer. It scales down to just under 12% for us. That is a significant number when you think about our population, our year-round youth population. So overlapping that with substance use. 12 to 49-year-olds who had abused prescription painkillers, 19 times more likely to try heroin. So the thing that we love about learning the brain is there's so much to still learn. We recognize that a key to a lock is in our brain, and what we naturally produce to make us feel good, that euphoria, is the same chemical compound that opioids do to our brain. If people take a pain pill, the first initial feeling is relief, almost flushed wave of heat over their body, a sense of relaxation, and yes, blocking any legitimate pain that's in the body. Who wouldn't want that feeling? The challenge is that heroin is now more readily available than most drugs on island. 10 years ago, before it became decriminalized and it was getting rushed over the border from the south near Mexico, heroin wasn't a top priority for drug dealers, for cartels to move. A 10% potency bag would go for $50 to $150. Today in Nantucket, a 2% potency now goes for $10. So when we're looking at the math, we're saying it's getting much more potent and much more affordable. So we do recognize that there are people that legitimately start with addiction and finding pills in cabinets. It was the wisdom teeth being taken out. It was the knee surgery that happened. It was going over to my grandparents' house and recognizing they had a lot of pills and just trying them. There is as much availability for heroin directly in the community that's available. That's worrying. 3.6 people that abused painkillers went on to use heroin over the next 5 years. That's a little bit of a stat just saying that it's becoming, in the past, we looked at substance abuse, that maybe it was alcohol, then it was cannabis, then maybe it was cocaine, maybe down the road it would be a synthetic drug, it would be Molly, it would be ecstasy, it would be maybe some kind of mushrooms. We're now seeing the hop in middle school from alcohol to heroin. We are seeing it more readily available in high school where people may not even be using cannabis as a first choice drug. So what we recognize by that is the conversations need to happen sooner and earlier when age appropriate, and recognize that it does happen here. One of the things that the agency works really hard with is always pairing with the police department and the fire department, the sheriff, the court, is recognizing that when we did crisis response, many people reached out to behavioral health, but no other system of care. So for example, they may call us as a crisis provider saying, I just overdosed, I just used Narcan on myself, I will not go to the ER. We look at the stat behind us of recognizing there's a significant number of unreported overdose in which people are revived. We did see in the Inky several weeks ago that there was a certain number of overdoses within a common week. If we know that many, we would want to double, if not triple that are not being reported. So I just kind of want to let that sink, that we recognize it's getting more potent, more readily available, and that many people aren't seeking services. There is hope, by the way. This is going to end on hope. So why does this happen? Why does this continuously come up as a conversation? People ask this to me all the time. I love talking about it. My team loves talking about it. Is it because we're out to sea? Is it because we have seasonal affective disorder? Is it because we have a hospitality community that swings the population? Is it because we have a lot of minorities moving in and it changes the acculturation of the community? Well, it's a combination of all of those. And we wish it was simple, and we wish it was one thing we could fix. Couple of things that I think that are really important to recognize that make people feel stressed out, make people feel overwhelmed, that could lead to substance use and significant mental health are some of the stats I put up here. 12% unemployment, which is about 7 times higher than the rest of the Commonwealth. We have a large group of people that consistently go without work. I don't know where everyone lives, but I can imagine rent is going up. Cost of utilities is going up. Stop and shop groceries still going up, but work consistently ends up being inconsistent. If we look at kind of the sine wave, 12% January, February, March of unemployment, down to 2% in August. Many of the families that the counseling agency serves, they work 3 jobs, 6 to 7 months of the year, and white knuckle it in the winter and the coldest times that they are. We also recognize that higher than average number of children, almost 15%, live below the poverty line. So not only are these families without work, there are also children that are in the family struggling. The cost of living in Nantucket is twice the national average. I think many of us feel that when we go to the mainland and we're like, ooh, it's cheap here. 16.6% Nantucket residents are foreign birth. We recognize that the school system shared with us that the incoming class this last year, 81 kids, 50 of them did not speak English as a first language. Our community's changing, and it's changing so quick we're having a hard time keeping up with it. We also want to look at our workforce. Who lives here? Who lives here year-round? Who lives here for a part of the time? More than 14% of full and part-time employed Americans report drinking heavily. Of the highest rates of current illicit use, I'll do the math for you. It's 60% of our workforce that's at risk. 30% of them work in the trades. If we did a snapshot of Nantucket families, they are construction, they are plumbing, they are electricians, they are gardeners. That is a bulk of our year-round community. We have a very tiny percentage of nurses, school teachers, and direct responders. We have a very, very tiny group of real estate. So what we're looking at is that those that are typically using their body under really cold, hard temperatures, sometimes without work, are who we are looking at in our community that are at risk. In the last 2 years, we are sad to say that we lost 10 adult men to suicide. When we looked at that, they were tradesmen. They were white, they were over 50, they had been working their bodies consistently in a field and likely had pain, and in some spectrum, maybe using alcohol or another substance. We just went over all the risk factors, and we could literally check off the box saying, they may be out of work January, February, March. The cost of living went up. The cost of opioids are cheap. And chronic pain is a legitimate thing that as we age gets harder to deal with. So we know how this impacts Nantucket. It impacts our families that are the backbone of our community. They are our workforce. They are also our next generation of who we want to appeal and shape to and mold. I want to talk about all the incentives of what we're doing to address this. There are many of us, and I'll just say not too many of us in the audience, the Behavioral Health Task Force, the Alliance of Substance Abuse Prevention, Healthy Community Collaboratives, Nantucket Cottage Hospital, Autism Speaks. All of us consistently touch base saying, how can we do this together? We recognize it's all hands on deck. We know our community is growing. Its needs are growing, and we need to work better together. So the first thing that I think is a takeaway is that mental health is something we all have, And substance use can happen to anyone very easily. Every single person that I've ever taught for addiction said, I never saw this coming. I thought I was just like my friends, able to party just like they were. I saw 50-year-old men, same situation. I'd been working. I started with a pain pill because I needed it to deal with getting up and going to work. My prescription ran out. My tolerance got higher. I had no other choice to maintain and just be able to feel normal without using heroin. And yes, it starts by maybe ingesting a pill and maybe snorting it, and then at some point getting to IV use. It happens for our young group that, again, have more access, especially in college, especially being young and out on a social scene, where it's cheap and it's available and it's normalized. It's not even a shocking thing for young people, and they'll tell you all the time, oh yeah, they do a little H. It's normalized. What we can talk about is that mental health and substance abuse happen. We need to normalize it so that people recognize that getting help is an option. It can change people's life, and there are services out there. It not being a conversation is actually a risk factor for us. The more we talk about it, the more we normalize that we all have it, we just need to figure out how to help one another, it lowers the stigma around the labels. I'm an addict. I'm a depressed person. Nobody says that about I'm a cancer patient. We're a person with one part of us that we're working to make better. Collaborating on resources, grants, and staff. A beautiful example of this is we had a private foundation fund the Behavioral Health Task Force for $400,000. Over 2 years, we came up with 6 free substance abuse groups a week drop-in, a psychiatric nurse practitioner to swing back and forth between the primary care providers so we could do early screening. We ended up having community forums in which we flew specialists from all over the East Coast to Nantucket to have conversations just like this. They have also supported Janina Keene, who's here this weekend, Friday and Saturday, for a family awareness symposium, normalizing that families of addiction need as much help dealing with their loved ones as the person struggling with addiction. We also can encourage with our tax dollars, with our vote, where town money goes. The Health and Human Service contract of our community gives 16 grants to our most needy not-for-profits, the food pantry, elder services, ASAP, Meals on Wheels, and the counseling agency. We need to recognize that we really need to start putting our money where our hearts are and funding that. We can also encourage and collaborate on very large state grants and national grants to bring more funding here. We are not comparable to other rural communities. Our homeless population can't just hitch a ride somewhere to the next homeless shelter. If our food pantry is closed, there's not another place they can go. We are under-resourced in a lot of different ways, and we can use that to our advantage to get major funding. We also know that employee assistance programs, we've really been working on this with the Builders Association. We recognized they were a community at risk, so we've been directly outreaching to them, as well as our hospitality employers, saying substance abuse is going to happen. Let's talk about it before it's a crisis. How can we keep your employees at work safe? And by doing that, they get free treatment. Maybe it's the first 3 sessions, maybe it's the 4th sessions. It's a don't ask, don't tell policy. Just get them into treatment. We don't share the information back to the boss, but the staff could walk in and get treatment confidentially without using any health insurance. We do recognize our trades often don't have health insurance, or they're underinsured. They have health insurance, but it's catastrophic. It doesn't cover behavioral health. They have a copay that's $15,000. Our families are not going to pay to be in treatment, but their employers can help with that and keep a steady workforce. We also work very hard to develop youth diversion programs. As I mentioned, through the Family Resource Center, Candace Tatro is a fabulous example of going to the public and the private schools, working with administration, saying, who are you really worried about? Can I get their families in here? Can I talk to them? Can we tell them what probation would be like and that they don't want to be on it? Let's work preventatively before it ends up being a crisis, which is our whole concept right now. Let's do more on the offense than just being reactionary and dealing with the tragedies. So I touched on a few of these, community awareness, symposiums, public speaking. Myself, my team, we try to do this as much as we can, 2-3 times a week, social media, getting information out. Knowledge is power. We also are very proud as an agency to do evidence-based training. This isn't just what we think. Psychology as a field is a beautiful art form and as science, it is studied. We know that there are certain techniques that have been honed to treat certain disorders. We work rigorously to ensure all of our staff maintain their licensure and stay on top of best practices as drugs emerge, as youth continue to change, and as families continue to look different in multi-different languages. We just finished a 40-hour training last week, crisis intervention training. We had all first responders in a room for a week. Every dispatch, every police officer, every fire responder, learning about mental health, learning about addiction. How do they respond? What do they need to ask on a telephone? What is a safety check? We are all getting on the same page saying, let's use the common language, let's know what we're looking for, and let's all connect them to the same kind of care so we don't let anyone fall through the cracks. We also do a lot of question, persuade, refer, a lot of suicide outreach and intervention. It's the myth that if you ask if someone is thinking about killing themselves, that you're going to plant a seed, that they're going to follow up on that. We have no evidence of that. It actually is a great relief that somebody who has held something heavy that they couldn't talk about, they could talk about it, that it was safe, that there may be an option, that they may want to have some opportunity to let some of that pressure out of the tire before it pops, literally. We do hospital staff, every single church we've presented to, youth groups, Builders Association. If you know of everyone who has not had the QPR training, it's 1 hour, it's free, let me know. I want to talk to them. Collaboration, as I said, there are a lot of community task force, all volunteer-based. I'm on quite a few of them, the Nantucket Project, the Steering Committee for the Community Foundation, Healthy Community Collaborative, Behavioral Health Task Force, and likely some other ones. But what we're doing is continuing this conversation together of what are you seeing and what can you bring back? What information do we have that we can share? We're no longer silos of services and not-for-profits. We're all on the same page saying this is code red, we need backup. Prevention, the Bridges program, there are a lot of very active, very healthy people in recovery that are really trying to step up and say, I will give you my card and my number, and if you know someone, I will go with them to a meeting. I will meet them at the ER. I will meet them at the police station. Citizens, just getting involved. We call it the Bridges program, literally getting that bridge from one person to the place they need to get. Marketing and PR, you're going to hear a lot more on radio, a lot more on social media, a lot more on paid advertising and Inky, normalizing mental health. Rotary has taken a great example of this recently where they're putting their dollars towards a whole marketing campaign that can be everywhere, specifically looking at our most at-risk population. Our young 20 white males, likely using some substance, and our older tradesmen. Those are our two biggest demographics that we are particular at high risk for that we're trying to outreach to. Again, Rotary is a volunteer group that said, we want to take a stance on that. Pursuing grants and benefactors. We know that makes a world of difference. I have a grant writer, thank goodness. 33 grants for over $2.3 million pending just this year alone. The agency could not be whole if we didn't have the second shop, fundraisers, and grants. That's how not-for-profits stay alive. It also ends up working better when we're collaborating together. Grants like that, foundations like that. So what's the agency specifically doing to address this? We have some pretty exciting things we're really, really proud of. As I said, we have more than doubled in the last 3 years. We anticipate growing at a slow, steady pace that is sustainable. There's been a lot in the past that has needed to be done, really rolling up our sleeves to get us where we are now. And because of that, we are now eligible for the Certified Community Behavioral Health Center. This is a SAMHSA initiative nationally. Massachusetts picked up the pilot. It was initially 66 agencies that went under a very rigorous protocol. down to 14, down to top 4. We are very proud to be in the top 4 and hope to be certified by January. What this means is that we are doing the best care we can comparatively across the entire nation. It also means that the state and the federal government will acknowledge that a lot of what we do is free and they want to pay us for it. That's the most exciting thing. I have goosebumps. We're going to get paid. So what it's going to look like, it is going to financially make us whole for the services of those that need it most. No insurance to Mass Health will be fully reimbursable. My psychiatrist that I pay his flight and his flight time and all of his costs to come over, they're going to pay me for it. Instead of us being so reliant on our community to pay for it, the state is starting to look and say our rural communities need more help. The Baldrige Performance Excellence, the town, as you may know, really wanted to ensure our financial sustainability and asked for a management audit of my team. We took that and we said we're going to make this work even better for us than anticipated. We're going to choose a nationally certified, which actually came from an act of Congress through the Department of Commerce, to become performance excellence in what we do. It is a year-long, vigorous program. The CEO of the Northeast branch of Baldrige is personally working with my team so that we can streamline things, make it the most efficient, document anything so that we have a formalized training so in 50 years from now, it's the exact same, if not better. The inconsistencies of the agency in the past, that's the old chapter. The new one is that everything is going to be evidence-based, gold standard, and sustainable. It also comes with it a vote of excellence. We are GuideStar Silver rated for our fiscal transparency and our stability. We're really proud of that. We worked hard for that. We're going to maintain it. Our last one, we have partnered with Cape Cod Community College and the workforce development to ensure that it is way too costly for me to send my staff of almost 30 to the mainland for CEUs. We're going to flip it. They're going to come here. We're going to pay them for a day or two to train everyone we can. Some of it's going to be internally, clinically within the agency. Other times we're opening up to the community, the therapist community as a whole. So school therapists, therapists at the Nantucket Cottage Hospital, as well as our team. It's a team builder, and make sure we're all doing it the same way. It will be for free. We're really, really proud of where we've come from, and I can say, you will all be the first to know that in 65 years, we have never legally changed our name, and today is the first day I can announce that we will be known as Fairwinds, Nantuckets Counseling Center. The major unveiling. So we worked with a private benefactor for over 6.5 months with strategic outreach to benefactors, foundations, state entities, our community, different think tanks, and said, who are we? Are we explaining ourselves well? We knew that Family and Children's Service sounded like a State Department. We are not. We're a private not-for-profit. Family and Children's Service, it didn't explain who we were. We are really proud that this name, Fairwinds, is a connotation of smooth sailing. Let the wind be at your back. It highlights with the blue waves and the yellow sun behind it, and I'm gonna, okay, there, that things are on the up and up, that there is hope. We intentionally did this to lower stigma. We intentionally did this to say it was Nantucket-centric. We intentionally put Nantucket's Counseling Center, as we are the only counseling center on island, in our name. We will be launching a brand new website, brand new mission statement, all of that to really coincide with the amazing transformation that the entire team, the entire board has worked towards in addressing mental health. So, without further ado, I wanted to open it up for questions, and I love questions, so thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. If you have a question, please raise your hand and I will come over with a microphone. Any questions? Well, I have a question real quick and then I'll get to you. What's the size of your team?
We're 28 in size, 17 are clinical staff. For our retail, you know what? Can I do this again? Nope. Oh, no. Okay. Oh, no. If you'll give me one moment. Oh, yes, thank you, Amanda. So in your handouts, I did leave some for everybody on the seat of their chair. It goes through some action steps of what we've accomplished over the last 3 years. It has a full staff listing, so you could recognize some names with some faces out in the community. It does go through all of our free resources, including our family support group by a therapist, Dr. Jephthah Tausig-Edward, on Saturdays. It does go through our free Narcan community training, in which 4 times a year we teach people how to give the life-saving medication to reverse the signs of an opioid. We plan out to give 100 free doses each time we talk. Our next one will be at the library, and I'll confirm the date before the next 2 short of time. So please take all of that information, but it does have the full staff listing of 28. $160 a dose. It was a nasal injection. It is now moved to an IV injection, a needle injection, almost like an EpiPen, because the potency of the heroin went so quickly with fentanyl, which was cut with it, that people were having to use 3 and 4 different nasal injections, and it was getting too scary and too close to the line of reviving somebody, that now the potency, the strength, and the way it's delivered has been amped up. Dan's Pharmacy, Island Pharmacy, both provide it. It does not need a prescription. It is over the counter. We'll have little sheets of paper, so if people feel a little bit nervous about saying it, they can just show the pharmacist and would be able to buy it there. $160, when people are struggling with sobriety, they are not going to spend the money on Narcan. We want to make sure that the loved ones who are living with them, the parents, the girlfriends, the husbands, have them in-house in case it happens. Thank you, Athlon.
You just answered my question.
Oh.
It was about Narcan and how do you get it.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
Well, this was very informative, so thank you for that. Just out of curiosity, what is the poverty level on Nantucket? If you know, I'm not sure.
I don't know a specific number, but I know that it's going to be very underreported, just like our population is. They say that it ranges from about 12 to 17,000 year-round, and if we say 60% of ours is workforce, and we have about 17% that are undocumented, I would have to ask someone else to do the math off the top of my head, but I think it's pretty high. Yeah.
Hi. I know there's a Suboxone program.
Yes.
Is the 6-month preparation available yet?
So Dr. Lepre stepped in, and we are really proud of him as our island doctor to provide methadone, Vivitrol, and Suboxone, in particular for opioid treatment. It's called medication-assisted treatment, MAT therapy. It is evidence-based to provide MAT therapy with counseling. The counseling agency, Fairwinds, does work very closely with Lepre's team. It depends on the amount that the person has been using, how long they've been using, and how they come into treatment. There are multiple options, but it is insurance-based. So what the common is Suboxone either in pill or strip, in which you can cut it down and eat it. So Vivitrol is an IV shot in the butt, usually designed for after a higher level of care, such as an inpatient treatment. They can be discharged back to the community with that to cover it for 30 days. And the new 6-month treatment is not, I don't believe, readily available yet, but should be.
How does Fairwinds intersect with the 12-step programs?
We house the 12-step community within the same building. 12-step is always a component of care. There's not one way to get clean. It's always suggested. So there's smart recovery, there's NA, there's AA. There are many people that choose not to go that route and end up white-knuckling it on their own. We can't say there's one way to do it, but what we can say is that there's multiple attempts of trying it and getting it right. We are always supportive, especially with the Bridges program, of connecting people who would even just contemplate going to a meeting once. We are active in reporting that there are many people that get sober with peer support. We know peer support is a huge component of recovery, is recognizing someone else who's gone through the exact same thing. What we did on the other flip side is when I started, I was one of 2 licensed alcohol and drug counselors on Nantucket. In my tenure at the agency, we've now doubled it to 5. It's more than doubled it. So 5 providers are now working towards licensure to provide therapy in addition to supporting a 12-step peer recovery movement.
I don't like microphones. The other thing to answer on a drill down level about how we work with AA and NA is anybody who comes in for any kind of substance abuse disorder, we do something called a treatment plan with them. When we're treatment planning, it's always brought up as part of the treatment plan to see if they are willing to go to NA or AA. So on an internal level, that's always discussed as an option and as something that's hugely necessary. It's been shown to really improve the outcomes of being able to stay sober.
And that's Athlon Sweeney, our clinical director. Yes. Al-Anon and CODA and Alateen. So there are lots of different ways to support people in recovery. Most of them are held within the Guin Village property. We have resources always readily available about times, location, and which groups. We think it's a part of it.
We've got one question here, and then I'll come to the front row.
Does your first responders include EMTs?
Yes. For the crisis intervention training, EMTs were definitely included in it, absolutely. We do it every year so that we are catching all of the new people coming in and are thankful that Chief Pittman and Chief Root are so supportive of that.
What is the percentage of teens that are addictive and that you counsel in Nantucket?
Well, we don't know the entire percentage of who is addicted in the community. Of our 47% that we serve, I would say maybe, I wouldn't even say half of that are co-occurring disorders. A lot of them we're catching earlier on. 7 through 13 are very pivotal years. It's a very intense program for CBHI. We're trying to catch them before they start substance use. What we do end up seeing is a lot of the teens from high school literally walking over wanting treatment for substance use, but I won't say it's a majority at this point. We do work with the school systems with surveys to really wrap our arms around how many people are using, who are they, how can we reach them, and some of that is the education of informing parents, grandparents, loved ones to start to have the question and realize where to refer them. There are 7 wonderful private practitioners on island. There are amazing backbone of behavioral health providers in the public school. We offer a lot of support to Lighthouse and the new school. But families starting the conversation can at least raise some flags to get them into care to ensure that if it was occasional substance use, it doesn't lead to addiction over frequency and tolerance, long-term use.
Hi again. I've been reading about court diversion programs lately, which bypasses police record for substance abuse.
So, great question. So, is there a court diversion program to help keep people kids out of the court system? We just had the assistant DA on island and met with the public schools this last week. 2 things. If it is a significant federal offense, or if it is a second-time substance abuse offense, they do go through a court hearing. They do have a record. But if it is early in the school or with parents' knowledge, there's a 6 weeks program, a youth diversion program, saying getting them, what is it called? Keep them coming back. Keep them coming back. It's a 6-week program. It's educational. If they complete it with counseling, with probation attendance, they divert going to court. It's a very new thing that we are trying, and we're really trying to tighten that loop with the public school system in particular so that these young kids don't have that on their record and then have to deal with it the long-term effects of that later in life. But it needs to be pumped up, and we're working on it.
We've got 2 more questions right here in the front row.
Other than a safe place, is there a homeless shelter of any sort for people that fall through the cracks?
So a safe place does an amazing job when someone is in a domestic violence situation that is ready to start a new life off island. They can arrange very short-term 1 or 2 night placement, but as it's such a small community, it's not safe for the person having it. We have no homeless shelter. So we do have people who try to sleep in the AA center, sleep outside of our doors, sleep in their cars, sleep up in the moors. We recognize that people come here for work because they believe that there's the great capacity of making a lot of money, but can't afford the housing. What we are resource lacking, we do not have a crisis stabilization unit, a detox, an intensive outpatient program, a step-down unit, a sober house, bless you, or a homeless shelter. Those are big sources of a continuum of care that we need to fundraise and build for this community. So when someone is homeless, oftentimes, and they're couch surfing, we usually say that it's more affordable in Hyannis. And we do end up sometimes suggesting people to leave, which we could do better.
Do you feel like you're right-sized currently for the tasks in front of you?
Absolutely. I can confidently say with a lot of board support, and we have Amanda Congdon, our board president, to your right, Charlie Walters in the back, our vice president, Gina Henneke, our clerk, a lot of community support providers here. There's a lot of people hands on deck ensuring our financial sustainability as well as longevity for the agency, providing needs for the community. I believe the fact that we have gotten so far to become credentialing for the Certified Community Behavioral Health Center is a testimony to that. I also believe that our Baldridge Performance Excellence, that the main CEO of Baldridge handpicked to work with us, is a compliment. So yes, I do think that we've made every single effort to actually get to a place where we're thriving and thinking about growing. So thank you.
We have time for 1 more question. If anyone has any other questions, we have one right here. Thank you.
Are there other conditions that you haven't mentioned that you routinely provide services for? So beyond substance abuse or depression or suicide, what else is available?
Yep. So the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, through APA, the American Psychological Association, we treat almost every diagnosis in there, from OCD to panic attacks to body dysmorphia to eating disorders to grief counseling, significant grief counseling, depression. We have definitely significant mental health disorders around schizoaffective, schizophrenia, bipolar, every single substance use you could imagine. A lot of developmental disabilities for young people, early intervention for autism, early intervention for youth that have either a seizure disorder or a complicated medical diagnosis in addition to a behavioral health component. Psych testing is beautiful for unveiling that. If you think about it, we have it. If not, we work very closely to refer to a specialist, likely in the Boston area.
Well, let's have one warm round of applause, one final warm round of applause for this amazing Food for Thought. Thank you for joining us. Next week, we'll be back here with Kathleen Minahan, who will be talking about health and nutrition in the upcoming holiday season. Thank you.
And I'm here for questions if you need any, or you want a new postcard of fair ones. Thanks.